everyone, I hope you're having a good morning. My name is Stephanie Tom, and today I'm presenting my AP research project on pageants as politics. So first I'll be going through a quick literature review in which I talk about a few sources I studied and really led me to my research question. Then I will go into my methodology on what I studied, the results of my study, and then what I concluded from it. So, funny thing, I actually had never watched the Miss USA or Miss Universe pageants before. The main reason I was looking into pageants is for a sort of funny reason. My favorite movie is Miss Congeniality. So I actually had a really positive view of pageants because of that, because the movie so strongly focuses on the fact that these contestants are more than their looks, and they're very culture and worldly and educated in so many different fields. So then I looked into the pageant more recently to see if that met up to my expectations. And along the way, I found some other really interesting things, which is that recently a transgender businesswoman from Thailand named Ann Jay, she had just bought the pageant. And because she is so open about her gender identity, that's really made the pageant somewhat of a political statement with her involvement in it. And I looked into the organization itself and found that their motto really, they pride themselves on being a platform that advocates for human rights and diversity. So really everything was pointing into a political direction for me. And when I looked into politics and Miss Universe, I found that in 2023, the winner was actually exiled from her home country because she had different political ideals from her president. And this is not the only time that these winners have been criticized. President Trump, he did own the pageant before, and because of that, all these girls were constantly in the public eye and they were kind of pulled into the political world. Also, although I never watched the pageants before, I did know there was a questioning part, and there is one clip that I've seen many times in which the contestant is asked if she believes that a natural-born woman or a transgender woman could win the pageant, and that's again a very politically centered question. However, when I tried to find anything about politics within the competition itself, about any of the contestants talking about politics, there's pretty much nothing. And so I decided that I would research how could I improve the Miss Universe pageant so that it verifies participants as political figures instead of beauty queens. And this was done through content analysis. Content analysis is the study of certain texts that are analyzed to see any patterns or trends in data. For me, I chose 3 different Miss Universe pageants. One of them I knew was going to be the most recent one, and then I used a random number generator for the earlier years and then the middle years. So overall, I was researching 1978, 2006, and then 2024. And what I was analyzing was the amount of time or any indication where they're judged on their appearance, and then compare that to when they're brought up politics, talk about humanitarian work, and then compare that to all the other events. And I chose this because it's a very efficient method. It allows me to be in control, it's flexible, and it's also very inexpensive. So actually, when I went and researched all the different pageants, I was very surprised about my results because although I was looking for when it was appearance-based, there were a lot of other things I didn't take into account. For example, I found that there was the swimsuit portion, the evening gown portion, and then there was like a national costume competition as well. And these were all explicitly said to be appearance-based. However, there were a lot of other things that weren't said to be appearance-based that were included in the pageant. For example, when they talked about their top 30 in the 2024 pageant, it was just a 20-minute segment of the girls posing. And it was just a little unnecessary. And then I actually, to my disappointment, found that there was absolutely really no political aspect in these pageants in the years that I had to research. And then the other factors I noticed were like a small amount based on crowning, and then there was a few musical performances. And so I took account how much time that the contestants were actually on screen. And it actually surprised me when I watched it because I felt like it really wasn't about the girls themselves. There was so much else going on. So in 1978, they were on screen for 66% of the time, then 69%, and then in 2024, they were on screen for 83% of the time. And in 1978, more than half of that competition was appearance-based. And the questioning once again, was not political questioning. They were actually asked about their personal life, and I can quote, they were judged on the charms and personality that they displayed, not on actually what they were saying. And then the other time, which was like musical performances. Then, in 2006, 74% was appearance-based, so that actually went up. And in this one, I felt very much that they were focused on appearance. In fact, there were even some unnecessary comments about appearance. I counted 35 overall in this pageant alone. And once again, questioning, although they didn't say they were judging on charms and personality, they were not asked any political questions. And then we see in 2024 that the appearance-based section does go down a little bit. However, it's still very high. So now that we realize there's absolutely no political factors inside the pageant, I went through a creative route and have a create project about a pageant that I would create where they are evaluated on their political sort of skills. So in the beginning of all these pageants, they have an introductory where they kind of just say their country's name pretty loudly. But I think if we try to take this into a political view, we could have them evaluated on their public speaking skills and how well they know the political stance of the country. So they will have each 1 minute for the top 20, so it doesn't take that much time. Top 20 will talk about their main political stance on their country. They'll talk about some charities they support that go along with this political stance. And charities are not a new thing. This has been talked about in the previous pageants. However, it's not something that is outwardly said over and over again in the pageants. And then they'll talk about their past experience in politics. Then we'll get down to the top 10, in which they could really demonstrate their political knowledge, and they'll have 2 minutes to have a speech where they talk about their opinion of a political topic and then a solution to it. So for example, if they're given the topic of immigration, they could have like a political stance that they only believe in legal immigrants. So then they will have to have their opinion on that and then give a solution to illegal immigration. Then for the final top 6, we'll have a debate portion for a 1v1 competition in which this entire section takes 20 minutes. So each competitor is talking against each other for around 5 minutes. And that's, again, they're given a random topic. One side voices their opinion, the other side voices their opinion, and they're rated on their speaking and respect for another. And example of this topic would be like economy. One side could talk about socialism, the other side will talk about capitalism. And something else that I noticed in the previous pageants is that everything is entertainment-based. So the judges are all entertainers. In fact, they have social media influencers, they have a lot of actresses and models. But since this will be a political-based competition, I think having judges who are well-versed in the political field is a good idea. So we'll have some lawmakers, UN ambassadors, political analysts, and even some journalists. And this will also be hosted by your journalist. Something that I did like from the original pageants that I want to keep was the national costume competition. However, they wouldn't be really evaluated on their appearance in it, but I think this kind of gives a nice sort of leeway into politics, because although it's not really outwardly talking about politics, it kind of allows them to embrace their nationalism and embrace their culture of their country. So overall, my pageant came around to 1 hour and 40 minutes, and they are evaluated on 3 different sections, 20 minutes each, intro, debate, speeches, and then everything on the side is what they're not judged on. So hosting 10 minutes, the national costumes are 10 minutes, the crowning I'll say I'll give them like 3 minutes if they're quick, and then anything extra would be 17 minutes. But why does this matter, and why did I choose to do this? I think that currently right now, we're like sort of moving in a conservative direction, and I think allowing women to really be well-versed in politics is extremely important. And this doesn't mean that there are some drawbacks to this. I do know that the people who watch the pageant, they watch them mostly because of appearance. So I do know that the viewership would probably go down if I changed it. However, it brings in a completely new audience. And I also wanted to do this because it really gives some sort of protection and security to the contestants. Originally, we did see that all of them were criticized publicly by political figures, and by kind of putting them on the same level as them, that allows them some safety and respect. So thank you so much for listening, and here are my sources.
Okay. My first question is not off the list because it really doesn't apply to what you did. Historically, we don't really allow for women to have that kind of intelligence and be beautiful.
Yeah.
Would those parts that you are scoring on, would they be able to wear the gowns and be beautiful and intelligent at the same time?
Yes, I think that's why I wanted to actually include the national costume portion as well. They wouldn't be really evaluated on that, but something I would like to do is keep them in that costume so they feel very confident in themselves. They feel beautiful while they're talking about their knowledge, so it really balances it out.
Thank you.
So what do you believe will be the real world implications of this?
Well, I would like to say, because women are sort of lacking in politics, I would like this to be sort of the gateway for a lot of these contestants to get into the political world. And also I think it would really inspire the younger generation to take part and be a leader in this growing world.
Think about the initial curiosity that led to your inquiry. What other areas of inquiry might that same curiosity lead to?
So I decided to go like the political route because I was surprised about how little politics were talked about in the competition. But I think if I had gone a different route, I would talk about negative perceptions of the pageant itself. Earlier, like talking about how they're sort of viewed not as intelligent. And I think maybe if we could research into sort of like the public's perception of it, so like if I could research about any protests against the pageant itself, that's something that I would do.